I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who gets blindsided by his wife's betrayal, but here I am. Her name was Emily, and we had been together for 5 years. We were supposed to get married in just a few days, and honestly, everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. She was charming, smart, and seemed genuinely excited about the wedding. But I guess I was blind to the signs that things weren't as perfect as they appeared. From the start, there had been little things that nagged at me. She'd get unusually secretive with her phone, always quick to dismiss when I asked about texts or calls she received at odd hours. She'd brush it off, saying it was work-related or old friends reaching out. I bought it, mostly because I trusted her. Still, I remember how she'd get defensive when I'd peek over her shoulder, or when I'd ask her to share passwords or check her phone in front of me. She'd snap back with a snide comment, saying I was being paranoid or that I didn't trust her. She'd also start staying late at work, claiming she had to finish reports or attend meetings. But her late nights weren't unusual before, so I didn't think much of it at first. I'd come home from work and find her glued to her phone or laptop, texting someone quietly, her face sometimes turning a little red when she thought I wasn't looking. That unsettled feeling in my gut was there, but I kept telling myself she was just stressed with wedding planning or work stuff. Then, the little lies started piling up. She'd say she was going to the gym, but I'd find her car in a different parking lot, or she'd claim she was at her mom's, but I'd run into her leaving a hotel downtown late at night. I brushed it off, wanting to believe she was just busy or maybe even just overwhelmed. Still, I started feeling like I was losing my grip on things, like I was missing something, some crucial piece of the puzzle. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but I couldn't shake this gnawing anxiety. I'd catch her looking at her phone with a guilty expression, or she'd suddenly cancel plans last minute, saying she was tired or busy with work. And then came the calls, late-night secret calls. I'd hear her talking in hushed voices. I never quite caught the words, but I knew something was wrong. My mind kept spinning, trying to piece everything together, but I was too scared to face the reality that maybe, just maybe, she was hiding something. One night I decided to follow her. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore the gut feeling anymore. I waited until she left for her work meeting, and I followed her car. She drove to a part of town I didn't recognize, and my stomach clenched tight. I parked a block away, watching her go into a fancy hotel. My heart thumped so loud I thought I'd lose my mind. She stayed inside for over an hour, then came out looking a little flushed, texting on her phone again. When she got in her car, she didn't go home. Instead, she drove to a nearby bar, which was odd because she'd never been much of a drinker. By then, I was caught between confusion and anger. I knew I needed to know the truth, but I also feared what I might find. The next day, I got my chance. I went through her phone while she was out at her mom's, and my eyes nearly popped out of my head. There were dozens of messages, some explicit, some just flirtatious, texting back and forth with none other than her best man, Jake. Jake had been my best friend since college, the guy I trusted with my life. And now I found out she'd been sneaking around with him for weeks, maybe longer. That moment hit me like a truck. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, my mind racing to process the betrayal. All the lies, the late nights, the secret calls, I could see it all now. The tears started welling up, but I held it together. I had to. I couldn't believe Emily, my wife-to-be, had been screwing Jake behind my back, and just days before we were supposed to say I do. The worst part, she swore she loved me, swore it was all over, that she'd never do something so disgusting. But those messages told a different story. The shock turned into a burning anger. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and broken all at once. How could she do this, especially with my best friend? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind to her lies. I replayed every fight, every strange look, every excuse she'd made. The pain kept building, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let it go, not without some kind of payback. I needed to make her see how much she'd screwed up, how deeply she'd hurt me, and honestly, I was already planning my revenge. That's where I stand now. I've seen the truth, and I'm not letting her get away with it. The wedding is off, of course, but the real game is just beginning. After I found those messages, everything changed in an instant. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, numb but furious all at once. The betrayal was so clear now. Emily had been sneaking around with Jake for weeks, maybe even longer. And the worst part, she kept lying, crying, swearing she loved me, telling me it was over with Jake, that she'd never do something so disgusting. I didn't know whether to laugh or break down. How could she sit there and lie with that false innocence, knowing she was screwing my best friend behind my back? I mean, I knew she was bitchy, manipulative, even that's how she always got her way. But this was next level. I felt like everything I believed in, everything I trusted, had just been shattered into a million pieces. The shock was so overwhelming I couldn't even cry. I just sat on the edge of our bed, staring at her phone screen, trying to process what I'd seen. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her lies. I guess I wanted to believe she was different, that she loved me enough to stop the affair, to stop lying. What made it worse was her reaction when I confronted her. The moment I threw the phone on the bed and told her I knew everything, she looked at me with those big, bitchy eyes and smirked. Said, "You're overreacting, Kevin. It's not what you think. You're just jealous because I spent some time with Jake. Nothing happened, I swear. It's just sex and I was confused. It's not a big deal." Her voice was so casual, so dismissive, like she was talking about some minor inconvenience, not the biggest betrayal of my life. I could see the fake tears in her eyes, the way she rubbed her face like she was distressed, but I knew better. I told her she was lying, that I knew about the messages, about the calls, about the nights she was out with him. That's when she got defensive and started throwing blame my way. Said I was controlling, insecure, that I didn't trust her, that I was paranoid because I was insecure about the wedding. I wanted to punch her. How could she lie so easily? How could she think she could get away with this? I felt so angry I could barely breathe. All I wanted was to shake her, make her admit what she'd done. My mind kept racing. I'd always been a pretty forgiving guy, but this was beyond anything I ever imagined. I was hurt, yes, but mostly I was furious. Furious at her for betraying me, furious at Jake for being such a piece of shit, and furious at myself for ever trusting her. I felt like a fool, someone naive enough to think I knew who she really was. How could she do this just days before our wedding? Was it just because I was too busy at work, too easy to manipulate? I kept asking myself if I'd missed any warning signs, if I'd been blind this entire time. The worst part was the feeling of helplessness. I wanted to do something, anything, to make her see how much she'd hurt me. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make her feel guilty. But I also knew I couldn't just lose it, not yet. I had to keep my composure, figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't let her see me break, not now. Everyone always said I was the calm one, the level-headed guy, but inside I was a mess. I spent the next few hours searching through her phone, her social media, anything I could get my hands on. I wanted to find out how long this had been going on, how deep it ran. I found more texts, more secret exchanges, plans to meet up. I saw her talking about how hot Jake was, how she loved the thrill, the secrecy. It was like a punch to the gut. Every time I scrolled, the girl I was supposed to marry, the girl I thought I knew, was out there sleeping with my best man, a man I'd trusted with my life. I knew I had to confront her again, but I needed to be strategic. I couldn't just blow up right now. I had to think, to plan. I decided I'd call her out in the morning when she'd least expect it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about catching her in a lie. It was about what I was willing to accept and what I was. The love I had for her was fading quickly, replaced by this intense need for justice, or maybe just revenge. I wasn't sure anymore, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going down quietly. She'd betrayed me, and I was already thinking about how I'd make her regret it forever. The morning after I uncovered everything, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole scene in my head. The guilt, the rage, the disbelief, it all collided inside me like a storm. I knew I had to confront Emily, but I also knew I had to be careful. This wasn't just about catching her in a lie anymore. It was about what I was willing to do in response. I got up early, trying to keep my emotions in check. She was still asleep when I entered the bedroom. Her face looked peaceful, innocent even, like she had no idea what I knew. That made me want to scream, but I took a deep breath instead. I had to do this right. I needed her to see how much she'd hurt me, how much I was willing to fight for myself, for my dignity. When she finally woke up, I looked right into her eyes and said, "We need to talk, now." Her face changed instantly. She looked guilty, defensive, like she knew she was caught. She sat up, trying to play innocent, but I didn't buy it. I told her I knew everything, about the messages, the calls, her nights out with Jake. I told her I'd seen it all and I wanted a straight answer. Her response was everything I expected. She started with those fake tears, her voice trembling as she lied her ass off. "Kevin, I swear it's not what it looks like. I was just confused. Jake and it wasn't serious. Honestly, I was just lonely and I didn't know what I was doing. It was a mistake. I swear I never loved him. I only loved you." She looked so convincing, so distraught that part of me wanted to believe her. But I knew better. I knew her game. I pressed her harder. I asked how many times they'd met, if it had been more than just the texts and late-night calls. She fidgeted and stammered, trying to come up with excuses. She claimed she'd stopped everything after I found out, that she'd realized she'd messed up, that she'd never do it again. That's when her tears turned into angry tears and she started calling me jealous, controlling, insecure. "You're making this all up," she snapped. "You're ruining everything over some stupid messages. I was just bored, Kevin. You don't understand how hard wedding planning is. I was just seeking comfort." I felt my blood boil. How could she sit there and lie like that? How could she justify screwing my best friend, then turn around and blame me? I was seething inside, but I also knew I couldn't just explode, not yet. I wanted her to see I was serious, that I was done playing her game. I told her I needed some time alone, that I wasn't going to make any decisions right away. Her eyes flashed with anger and she spat out, "What's the point? You're just going to punish me for something I didn't mean to do. You're overreacting." That was her way of trying to guilt me into backing off. But I saw through it. I was done being naive. She'd been lying all along and I had the proof right there. That day I started making plans. I knew I couldn't stay in this relationship anymore, not after what I'd discovered. I'd been betrayed in the worst way possible and I wasn't going to pretend everything was okay. I needed to think about my next move. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, but I also knew I had to be smart about it. I spent hours thinking, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to confront Jake, tell him I knew everything and see what he said. Part of me wanted to ruin her in some way, make her regret ever crossing me. But I also realized that revenge wouldn't fix the pain she'd caused. I was angry, yes, but I knew I had to be strategic. I needed to show her that she'd lost everything, me, trust, respect, without resorting to some reckless stunt. By the end of the day, I made up my mind. I was going to end it. No more lies, no more pretending. I'd have a clean break and I'd make damn sure she knew exactly why. She thought she could cheat, manipulate, and lie her way out of this. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. I was done being the gullible fool. This was about more than just the betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity and moving on from the girl who thought she could get away with anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. The weight of everything hit me harder than ever. I kept thinking about how Emily had lied to my face, how she had played me like a fool, and how her betrayal with Jake had shattered whatever trust I still had left. I kept asking myself if I should just cut her out completely or try to salvage some part of what we had. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no fixing this. Not after she'd lied so blatantly, not after she'd slept with my best man, the guy I trusted most in the world. In the quiet darkness of my apartment, I started planning my next steps. I didn't want to do anything reckless, at least not yet, but I knew I had to act. I needed to make her see I wasn't a fool anymore. I decided I'd wait until morning, then have the final conversation, one that would either end us for good or at least set the stage for her to realize she'd lost me completely. By dawn, I was ready. I had my phone in hand, a plan in my head. I told her I wanted to talk, that I'd made a decision. She looked surprised, maybe even a little scared, which was satisfying. I told her I knew everything, that I'd seen her messages, her calls, everything. Her face went pale and she started to protest, but I cut her off. I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I told her she had two choices. Either she came clean and admitted everything, or I walked away and never looked back. Her bitchy attitude flared up. "You're just overreacting," she said. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I love you, Kevin. I swear I do. I was just stupid, that's all. Her voice was so fake, so desperate that I almost laughed, but I kept my cool. Emily, I said, I've seen enough. I don't need your excuses. I know what you've been doing. Honestly, I don't even care anymore if you love me or not. The trust is gone. You lied, you cheated, and you did it with Jake, my best friend. That's unforgivable. I paused, watching her try to come up with more lies, but I was done listening. I told her to pack her things, that I didn't want her there anymore. She started crying, swearing she'd change, begging me to forgive her, but I wasn't having it. I told her that her crying was meaningless. I was tired of her bullshit. This was over. I felt a strange sense of relief, like I was finally free from a toxic relationship I should have ended long ago. She kept pleading, calling me names, trying to guilt me, but I just walked out of the door, leaving her crying behind. That day, I made arrangements to move out. I packed some of my things and stayed with a friend that night. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but also the best. I was finally free from her manipulations, her lies, her selfishness. I didn't want to be with someone who could so easily betray me with my own best man. That kind of pain doesn't heal overnight, but I knew I'd be better off without her. Looking back, I realize I was naive to think she'd ever truly change. That girl was selfish, manipulative, and completely untrustworthy. I learned that sometimes love just isn't enough, especially when betrayal runs so deep. It's hard to admit it, but I was better off without her. I've started focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends, rebuilding my confidence. I still feel the sting of it all, but I know I'll come out stronger. The lesson: never ignore the signs and never let someone cheat and lie to you without consequences. You only get one shot at life, and I refuse to let anyone ruin mine again. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I spent most of my time trying to put the pieces back together, rebuilding my confidence, figuring out what I wanted from life without Emily dragging me down. Honestly, I felt numb at first, like I was just going through the motions. But as the shock wore off, anger took its place. I was angry at her, angry at Jake, and even angry at myself for ever trusting her in the first place. I knew I had to do something, though. I couldn't just disappear and pretend it never happened. Part of me wanted to confront Jake, to tell him what I knew, to make him see the damage he'd done. But I also knew that would only escalate things, and I didn't want to go down that road. Instead, I decided to focus on myself and get some clarity. I started going to the gym more regularly, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and even seeing a counselor to help process everything. What really hit me was how much her betrayal had affected my view of trust and love. I used to believe in happily ever after in fairy tale romances, but now I saw how fragile everything was. Some people, Emily, Jake, were just selfish, willing to throw everything away for a quick thrill or a moment of pleasure. And despite everything, I realized I wasn't going to let their betrayal define me. I refused to be the victim forever. I wanted to reclaim my life and rebuild from this mess. One thing I did that helped was cutting out all contact with Emily. No calls, no texts, no social media. I blocked her on everything. It was hard at first. She kept trying to reach me, leaving tearful voicemails, but I knew I had to stay firm. I owed it to myself to move on, to start fresh. The more I pulled away, the clearer it became that I was better off without her. That girl was toxic, and I'd been blinded by love for too long. I also reached out to Jake once, just once, to hear his side. I texted him, telling him I knew everything, that I wasn't interested in fighting or revenge, but I wanted to know if he ever really cared about Emily or just used her. His response was brief: "She's a lying bitch just like you." That was enough for me. It confirmed what I already knew: he was just as selfish as her. I didn't need to hear more. I realized some people are just rotten to the core, and trying to fix them is a waste of time. Over time, I started to feel stronger. The pain didn't go away completely, but it became manageable. I learned to focus on myself and what I wanted out of life. I also learned the importance of trust and honesty, and how careless some people are with those things. Most importantly, I learned that I don't need someone like Emily dragging me down. I deserve better, and I'm not going to settle for anyone who cheats, lies, or manipulates me. Now I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm cautious, but I'm also hopeful. I know there's life after betrayal and it's up to me to make it better. My biggest lesson: never ignore the signs. Trust your instincts and never let someone's lies determine your worth. Because in the end, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself. And I'm done being that fool who ignored all the red flags. I'll rebuild, stronger and wiser, and I'll never let anyone betray me like that again. Looking back now, I realize that this whole experience was a brutal wake-up call. It's easy to get caught up in the idea of love and trust, especially when everything seems perfect on the surface. But betrayal has a way of stripping away that illusion fast, leaving you with nothing but raw truth and hard lessons. What I've learned from this is that I should never overlook the little signs, those moments when something feels off but I dismiss it because I want to believe in the best. I also learned that some people are just inherently selfish, manipulative, and unworthy of trust. Emily wasn't just some girl I loved. She was someone I thought I knew, someone I'd built my life around. And yet she threw it all away for Jake, for a moment of selfish pleasure. That realization crushed me, but it also freed me. It made me see that I deserve someone who values honesty, loyalty, and respect, not someone who cheats and lies with no remorse. Revenge. Honestly, I didn't go that route. I never wanted to stoop to their level to be like them. Instead, I decided to take control of my life, to cut out the toxic people, and to focus on rebuilding what I'd lost, my trust in myself and in others. I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on and proving to yourself that you're stronger than the pain they caused. Now, I'm in a much better place. I work on myself every day, trying to regain the confidence and happiness I once had. I've started dating again cautiously, but I'm not rushing into anything. The scar from Emily's betrayal will always be there, but it no longer defines me. It's a reminder of what I've endured and a testament to my resilience. The biggest thing I'd want anyone reading this to take away is this: never ignore your gut feelings. If something feels wrong, act on it. Be honest with yourself about what you deserve, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who isn't willing to be honest and loyal. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fully restore. But life goes on, and sometimes losing someone who betrays you is the only way to find your true self again. I don't regret what happened because it taught me a lot about myself, about my strength, my boundaries, and what I won't accept in my life. I've come out of this battered but better, and I know for sure now, no matter how much it hurts, I'll never let anyone cheat or lie to me again. I've learned my lesson, and I'm finally ready to move forward, wiser and more cautious than ever before.